so much for joining us for today's EAZA Animal Welfare webinar. I'm delighted today to be joined by Azogu-Sepe. Adu is the head of the Serengeti-Park Department of Research at the Serengeti-Park Hodenhagen. She started this in 2018. The motto of Idu's department is actually the title of her talk today, which is Animal Welfare is Our Welfare. Idu has a PhD in experimental psychology. She specialised in behavioural neuroscience, and that was from the University of Ottawa in Canada. And Idu approaches research from a animal-centred perspective, but she's also developed an internship programme for students with the philosophy of paying it forward, which I think is really exciting. She's the founder of the International Meeting on Zoo Research, Conservation and Biodiversity. That began in 2020. And in 2022, she became a core member of the EAZA Research Committee and also a section editor for 𝗔𝗲 in 2022. Idu's going to be talking to us today about how research at the zoo contributes to animal welfare and the positive impacts on animals and human stakeholders that has. We have had a few technical difficulties this morning / this afternoon, so I'm going to be running the presentation through my laptop, so apologies that if there's any sort of slight delays on that. You're very welcome to have your videos on, but please keep your microphones off until you're invited at the end. If you do have questions, please send them in to me. You can ask your questions at the end. We'd love to hear from you, so send them in and then I can compile them and I'll invite you to speak at the end of the session. So over to you, Idu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ellen, for the invitation to have this incredible talk. I am honored. And so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. When I first received the invitation, I was 4 weeks away from giving birth to my second daughter. So I was not able to do it last year, but I had requested maybe Ellen could reach back to me this year. So I'm glad that she did, and I'm happy to be able to give you this talk today. So I am Azogu-Sepe. I am the head of the research department at the Serengeti-Park Hodenhagen. And my conversation today will be about animal welfare is our welfare. So Ellen, if you can, please advance the slide for me. Okay, so when we talk about animal welfare, it's not just about kindness to animals. It's about recognizing that their well-being is deeply intertwined with our own, from the food we eat to the ecosystems and the rich biodiversity that we all depend on. Our health and happiness rely on this balance with the animal world. In a world where environmental sustainability, mental health, and public health are at the forefront of all these global challenges that we are seeing, we can no longer afford to view animal welfare as a separate issue. It is central to our shared future. Today, I'll then show you how protecting animal welfare is not only our moral obligation, but it's also crucial to our survival and our quality of life. So this is a quick overview of my talk today. I will be covering the strategic development of an in-house research department at our park. A shift from human-centered to an animal-centered perspective is a question. Animal welfare under the context of stress. What's research in a zoo? How does zoo research contribute to animal welfare? And the top-down positive impact on animal welfare and stakeholders. So tools to assess animal welfare in zoos will also be another mention, and then I'll leave with a take-home message. Okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, so the Serengeti-Park Department of Research was established in January 2018. The building up of the research department had to be a wanted endeavor from the management level. This comes from an ethical point of view and not from the perspective of marketing or only to increase the prestige of the park. Without such a want and passion from the management to create a department in their own zoo, it wasn't going to be a realized success. There are many well-established zoos, of course, without a research department. And this is not to say that these zoos aren't doing research or aren't involved in collaborations with multiple institutions. However, we at the Serengeti Park are one of the very few zoos in Germany with an in-house research department. There are multiple areas for the department. We have a guiding policy, our internship program. We have the collaborations. We also have publications, a zoo research development fellowship program, and our international meeting on zoo research, conservation, and biodiversity conference. We have the motto of the research department that Tierwohl ist unser Wohl auf Deutsch. In English, it means animal welfare is our welfare. Okay, please, next slide. Okay, so the research projects that we conduct at the park are aimed at improving the welfare of the animals in our care. And this is specific to our animal philosophy in that even though we keep animals in captivity, we work to improve their conditions and bring their management closest to how it would be in the wild, because that is a sign of respect to the animal. So next, please. So we want to improve welfare of animals in captivity, increase awareness and interest in conservation for visitors and staff, have evidence-based results to counter criticism and support animal management, and have far-reaching impact in the zoo world. So in general, it's just that we want that the result of ours may contribute to animal welfare in some other part of the world. Next, please. All right, so this is just a small video about our little Forschung Center. Here we display information about research projects that are ongoing at the park. And what we've done previously is just to further educate the visitors that we do have a research department at our zoo. So research in zoos are crucial for understanding the complex needs of captive animals, informing management practices, and fostering improved care. When we conduct rigorous studies, as researchers, we may identify effective enrichment strategies and health monitoring protocols that directly enhance the physical and the psychological well-being of animals. This commitment for us to research leads to significant top-down impact. This benefits the stakeholders, such as the zoo staff, the visitors, conservation organizations, as well as regulatory bodies by fostering collaboration, improving staff training, and enhancing visitor engagement. We recently started our own Instagram page for the research department. Here we would advertise upcoming works that we have, publications, and as well as our conference. We also have, if you click again, the QR code that you can scan to access the website for our research department. So please follow us on Instagram and check out the website of the research department. Okay, so next I talk about the internship program. We started this program in 2021 with the notion to pay it forward. We wanted to provide interns with a hands-on experience in wildlife research, conservation, and animal behavioral studies. So our goals include to foster learning, develop practical skills in the field, inspire future careers, allow the park to expand its network and enhance research capacity, as well as helping the park to strengthen its role in animal care, conservation, and public awareness. We have 3 internship areas: research, zoology, and veterinary medicine. I give you an example for a zoology intern. They do a rotation with the zoology team where you have the curator, the animal keepers, the biologist, and then they culminate their internship with a short research project. They also have, with the veterinary medicine, they follow the veterinarians around the park. They go through their day-to-day protocols and animal interventions, and also helping with the clinical examination of these animals, as well as in diagnostic procedures. They also prepare a short literature review on a topic that pertains to animal welfare and care. So far, we have completed internships with 7 students in veterinary and research and 1 student in zoology. If you could please advance the slide. Thank you. And one of our previous interns decided to do a bachelor's thesis with us, and this has culminated in a publication, which I will cover later. We have incoming in 2025, 3 veterinary medicine interns and 2 research, and of which 3 of these are Erasmus students. So we're really excited about that. In terms of collaborations, we see encourage cooperation with universities and institutions, as well as organizations, zoos, for a wide range of research topics. We provide a unique opportunity to assess and monitor species and their behavior that may not be possible to do in the wild. So as the research department further develops, we aim to engage more in situ projects. So if you want to see our collaborations that resulted in the form of supported projects and publications, you can also scan the QR code on your screen to access our research webpage. Okay, so the next page, I discussed publications. So far, since the start of the research department in 2018, we have 9 publications. Our most recent publication was in October 2024. It was a project from our previous internship program student, Martin Kranzlin, who decided to run his bachelor's thesis work with us. He tested the ability of 2 female African elephants, Bibi and Panya, to have social long-term memory for individual humans. So there he collected visual, auditory, and olfactory stimuli from familiar and unfamiliar persons. Then he ran a two-choice object test, where the elephants then showed higher interest in olfactory stimuli, so the scents from the t-shirts of previous keepers that they hadn't seen in 13 years than in unfamiliar keepers. They also showed more interest in visual stimuli from the current keepers than from unfamiliar persons. Despite the small sample size of this study, this is the first empirical evidence that African elephants can store information about specific people over a long period of time. It also speaks to the value of good animal-keeper relationships in the welfare of the animals. Okay, so the next part is our Zoo Research Development Fellowship Program. It's a work in progress, and it was inspired when someone reached out to me to ask how I created a research department at the Serengeti-Park Hodenhagen. So we can keep advancing. The aim is to equip zoo professionals with the skills, the knowledge, and the practical experience needed to establish and sustain a thriving research department in their facility. So more information will come for that as we continue to build it up. Okay, so then regarding our international meeting on zoo research, conservation, and biodiversity conference, brainstorming for it began in 2019, as there was a need to create a platform for zoo researchers, conservationists, academia, students and members of the general public to come together to share knowledge and perspectives for future-oriented solutions to biodiversity changes and what we could do to be more environmentally sustainable. So the goal of this conference was to raise awareness towards conservation and biodiversity changes, enhance zoo education and research outreach at the Serengeti-Park Hodenhagen, highlight the role of zoos and aquaria in conservation and support of biodiversity, give people the feeling of a concrete contribution to the world, and to become the foremost event showcasing zoo research in Germany with an international reach. So far, the number of countries in attendance, as well as our number of attendees. So our first event, we had to make it virtual due to the pandemic. And from that setup, we realized that we really had an audience that could lead us to creating a hybrid event. So the next part, I will just show you how many participants we had in our events and from which countries that they came from. So we could advance. All right, so from our virtual event, the first conference, we had 109 participants from 22 countries. From the second, we had 73 from 13 countries. From the third, we had 63 from 20 countries. And from the fourth, we had 67 from 15 countries. So this is just to show you that the conference does have international reach, and we hope to continue to do that. And for the foreseeable future, the conference will remain hybrid. Okay, next. All right, so we also had just a brief overview of the fourth event that we just had this year in April. We had an expert discussion panel, and the notable points from that were how to step outside of the bubble of the zoo and connect more with the outside community, how to bring children closer to nature to build up their personal connection with it and love of preserving it. What are we trying to achieve with conservation as a zoo? And how should the local community in that part of the world be more involved in reintroduction processes? So these talks, among many other comprehensive presentations, they serve to highlight research and conservation aspects for endangered populations. Next, please. So in April 2 to the 5th, 2025, we will be hosting the 5th IMZRCB. The theme for this event is Zoological Gardens. So what's in it for me? It invites participants to explore and reflect on the personal, professional, and societal benefits of zoological gardens. It's a focus on how different stakeholders can derive values from zoos. So please scan the QR code if you are interested, and check out the event's website and register, please. Okay, next. All right, so the question is, should we have a shift from human-centered to an animal-centered perspective? From an animal-centered perspective, animals are recognized as beings with their own intrinsic value, deserving of ethical consideration, protection, and care, regardless of their usefulness to us. This would contribute to a deeper understanding and respect for the natural world. All right, and we know that animals have evolved to thrive in specific environments, and they have distinct psychological, physiological, and social needs. An animal-centered perspective encourages a focus on meeting these species-specific needs, and we know as well that there are different species that have particular needs, so it's important that we are able to understand what those needs are and cater to those. So for example, the needs of a wild animal versus a domesticated one can differ greatly. It is also to understand that a chimpanzee and a crowned sifaka will have different welfare requirements. Next, please. So each care that's required has to respect these differences. I give you the example that the EAZA's taxon advisory groups, they have created and prepared best practice guidelines for specific species. So for those that are not sure what to do with certain species in their care, there are also guidelines available on the EAZA website. So for us in general, in the zoo world and outside, understanding natural behaviors, which are behaviors that are defined as those actions and the activities that animals engage in as part of their normal life processes in the wild or even in controlled environments that closely mimic their natural habitat, is essential to ensuring proper animal welfare. Next, please. Okay, I'll just go back one and come back. Okay, it should be fine. All right, so many animals have the capacity for decision-making, and they can exhibit preferences, desires, and emotions. You can click the next one. There's a video that comes up before this. Just advance, it's okay. And next. And then shift, okay, that's fine. So pretty much the video is blocked now, but it's a recent paper by Orban and colleagues, and they report on the sophisticated tool use and manipulation of a water hose by 2 Asian elephants at the Zoo Berlin. So for Mary the elephant, use of the water hose was part of her cleaning routine, and it involved distinct and purposeful actions. So her use of the watering hose in an intentional way could be viewed as an autonomous behavior, because she's exhibiting choice, she's exhibiting exploration, problem-solving ability, and cognitive flexibility. For Ankali, in the next picture, she is purposefully manipulating the water hose. If you could advance, please. Yes, so she's manipulating the water hose when she knows that Mary is trying to take a shower. So this could be considered sabotage, but it may also suggest cognitive complexity. So what I just want to note on this is that it's important to consider that while tool use by many species can indicate autonomy, the context in which the tool is provided. So for example, if it's provided in a zoo environment, this could also influence whether it is truly an expression of the animal's autonomy, or if it's a response to an enrichment activity that is provided by humans. Okay, and then we should also allow animals to make decisions about social interaction. So that would be this video with the rhinos, where they have, there's a lot of them in the Ariel in our park, and we're able to provide them with a larger, more open, free-range area to roam. So by providing such opportunities to the animals in our care, zoos can promote the well-being of animals, making sure that they maintain a degree of autonomy and choice, and that their natural behavior is also respected despite being in captivity. Next slide, please. Okay, so animals we know experience pain, stress, and fear. However, often their suffering is not immediately obvious to us unless they start to exhibit stereotypic behaviors. So these are certain types of behaviors that they exhibit, like licking and biting, enclosure structures, pacing and circling, having a purposeless type of behavior. So that is one sign that they're going through something and that we should pay more attention. Next slide, please. So there's a paper on the use of thermal imaging to assess health status in wild animals under human care. And here, 𝗜𝗲𝗧 and al., they note that clinically, changes in thermal patterns such as abnormal or asymmetrical distribution of heat have been associated with pathologies, alterations in blood circulation, as well as inflammatory processes. So an animal-centered perspective would emphasize the importance of scientific research on animal sentience and the need for the systems such as veterinary care or welfare audits that assess and alleviate suffering based on the specific experiences of the animal. Next, please. Okay, so regarding environmental enrichment, many animals, especially those in captivity, they suffer from a lack of environmental enrichment. So when we focus on their needs rather than our convenience, we can provide spaces that allow animals to engage in natural behaviors, which supports both their mental and their physical health. So enriching a captive environment encourages exploration, provides mental stimulation and a sense of control over the surroundings. It may also foster effective reproduction for sustaining the population. Okay, so an animal-centered perspective regarding ethical responsibility also challenges us to rethink these responsibilities. So there are top-down decisions that are based on ethical considerations that can help in a zoo committing to higher standards of animal care. Maybe they phase out practices that might be considered unethical or outdated, and they move then towards more naturalistic exhibits that prioritize animal autonomy and comfort. So most of you are well aware of the 5-domain model of animal welfare, developed by scientists such as David Mellor and Cam Reed in 1994. So this is a framework that provides a comprehensive approach to assessing welfare in animals. It helps to guide welfare assessments, methods, and advancements in welfare indicators. And it also integrates emotional welfare into research, which is great. So each domain interacts with each other. For instance, one of the most significant impacts of this model on zoo research is the emphasis it places on behavior and mental states, which then directly informs enrichment programs. So although knowledge of the 5 domains is becoming more and more widespread, and it has been adopted by the World Association of Zoos and Aquaria, there's scarce literature that has been published on its practical implementation in zoological gardens. So maybe in the next few years, we start to see an increase in these types of publications. Next, please. Okay. And lastly, social and emotional connections. So animals often form complex social bonds at the individual and the population level, and they show emotions such as affection, fear, and joy. So when we acknowledge the depth of this emotional life, it would require us to design then environments and provide appropriate management of social groups and their composition. In turn, this allows animals to maintain these relationships. So they need things like adequate space, social enrichment, and opportunities for positive social interactions. And this can help to promote emotional well-being and a sense of security for these animals. So animals in captivity, particularly social species, should not be kept in isolation or subjected to overcrowding. Okay, so this is more my area since my PhD was done on stress. So the subjective term stress, if you can advance the slide, it was coined by Hans Selye in 1936 to describe the non-specific response of the body to any demand. It refers to the physical, mental, or emotional response to external pressures, demands, or challenges. So central to this concept of stress are the responsiveness of the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and the sympathetic nervous system, of which the end product of the HPA axis are glucocorticoids. And these help to foster adaptation or vulnerability to present and future stressors. So really quickly, to dampen excess activation of the HPA axis and terminate the stress response, glucocorticoids would normally bind to the type 1 mineralocorticoid receptors and type 2 glucocorticoid receptors. However, when there's a chronic stress, the negative feedback loop is weakened and the system may remain activated. So the outcome of the stress system for any species depends on severity, duration and context of the stressor, the age of exposure, sex of the organism, species, the glucocorticoid circadian variation, and the hypo or hyper responsiveness of the HPA axis. Next, please. So as it relates to the human condition, stress has been used to describe a variety of reactions to human experiences, suggesting a disruption or disturbance of the internal homeostasis with a psychological component. Stress exposure to a certain extent can be beneficial in motivating people, such as in increased productivity, attention and memory, and enhancing resilience to future stressors. By contrast, chronic or unrelieved stress exposure can lead to hyperactivation of the HPA axis and abnormal secretion of glucocorticoids. So this then plays a role in the onset and development of pathological states such as depression and other psychological disorders. Next, please. So there are multiple causes of stress in animals in captivity. In most cases, animals suffering from illness, pain, poor housing, or training conditions, they show only subtle signs of stress until the condition becomes severe. So for us as humans, we don't listen to the whispers, then we hear the screams when the animal undergoes a lot of pathological states. So it's important that stress assessments are then done to determine what's going on really with the animals. And it would be helpful for them if we're using different parameters at the same time to assess them. So as in humans, the impact of stress is highly species specific. Some triggers include transport, noise, novelty, vaccinations, the ventilation in the housing, poor handling, and capture for the animals. All right, so an outline of model of stress on animal welfare is based on a proposal by Moberg from 2000. So to elicit a stress response, usually the stressor must first be perceived and then evaluated as a stressor by the animal. Then the behavioral and physiological responses are defense reactions that are aimed at dealing with the stressor. You can advance. However, if these reactions use up too much of the animal's biological resources, that is when we start to see a pre-pathological stage that occurs. And then if that is prolonged, eventually it results in some long-term pathology. As such, while some stress responses are adaptive, overexposure to stress can cause psychological and physiological problems. For example, you see impact on their behavior with stereotypies, with feeding, with increased aggression. You have the hypo or hyper-responsiveness of the HPA axis. You have reduced thermal regulation. You have impact on hormones, impaired reproduction. So the aim for us in the zoo and conservation space is to modulate these stress triggers for those in our care and in the wild, while we increase our awareness and understanding of what it really means to engage in evidence-based research and animal welfare practices for their management and for the improvement of their health. So one way to reduce stress triggers could be through training. It can be applied when you're preparing an animal for transport, for vaccination, for a change in environment, for social regrouping, just to name a few. So we just have to note that the stress response consists of this suite of hormonal and physiological reactions to help an animal survive potentially harmful stimuli. And we have to be careful to alleviate chronic stress conditions. Next, please. Okay, so these are color-coded, so please bear with me. We begin with behavior. So for behavior, we monitor and collect data to better understand animal behavior and group dynamics. the impact of changes to their routine, you can advance, and their needs. Yes, thank you. We are then able to make evidence-based recommendations for improving the care of animals. So research in a zoo regarding behavior allows for a greater repertoire of behavioral expression, and it reduces the influence of captivity stress. Regarding animal welfare, as an EAZA accredited zoo, we must reach certain welfare standards for animals in our care. And some welfare parameters include behavior, hormonal monitoring, body condition, keeper surveys of perceived welfare, as well as their breeding success. In terms of nutrition, in supporting animals' welfare, feeding practices that stimulate natural behaviors in the wild and good species-specific nutrition are very important. So these may be based on the individual needs of the animal, their physiology, digestive strategies, life stages, health issues, etc. And regarding husbandry, it is helpful for us when building new enclosures and deciding on animal nutrition and researching for information on the biology of the species. As such, research in a zoo is used in the diagnosis, the treatment, and the monitoring of potential wildlife diseases and animal husbandry and management issues. Next, please. Regarding environmental enrichment, enrichment programs helps to ensure that animals are expressing their natural behaviors. These include social, nutritional, employment, physical, and sensory approaches. So these will promote psychological well-being when done correctly, and provides opportunities to learn about and stimulate complex cognitive processes for these animals. In terms of reproduction, through research, zoo scientists can maintain genetic records of the zoo animals. It can help in developing cooperative breeding and transfer programs. It can help to ensure the longevity and the genetic diversity of animal populations. So breeding and rearing of offspring remain important natural behaviors that allow for zoo animals to thrive in a captive setting. Regarding conservation, research in a zoo can support conservation efforts that help to protect wild animals and their habitats by providing information that would be difficult to obtain in situ. And then zoos also learn how to take better care of their animals, because there is the possibility of breeding wild animals in zoos that then acts as a key factor in species recovery and an improvement in their conservation status. Regarding public understanding of science, research in zoos can provide added value to a zoo visit. Through sharing of information with visitors, the zoos can help to improve education and training, promote environmental awareness, change people's attitudes, and lead them to protect animals and conserve nature. Next, please. All right, so these are some educational boards that we have at our park. You have information on the vet work that takes place. There is also information on, you can advance. Yeah, the keeper's schedule and how they go about their day. Next. How best to design a zoo enclosure that it's beneficial to the animal as well. Next, please. The concept for conservation. Next, please. And you may also choose to advertise about your conservation efforts. So for us, we were able to reintroduce our southern white rhino Kai in 1996 to Namibia. So this is information for the visitors on that effort. Next, please. We may also choose to educate visitors through VIP tours. We have this one in our East Africa section. This is in our Rhino Areal, and in other areas of the park as well. You can keep advancing. Or you could choose to educate visitors through a guided tour. And that will be the last picture here. Yes, thank you. Next, please. So the question is, how does zoo research contribute to animal welfare? So just to note that species that are perceived as intelligent, sentient, or large in size are more often perceived by visitors as having poor welfare in captivity. This is for several reasons, which include their cognitive and emotional needs, their complex social structure and relationships, space requirements and natural movements, complex physical and psychological needs in terms of exercise, diet, and habitat, And lastly, the ethical concerns that stem from an increasing recognition that the animals have sentience. So research in zoos can contribute to shifting this perception by improving animal welfare standards, addressing health issues, improving management of group compositions and the social dynamics. And also, in order to improve the practices, it helps to demonstrate that with proper management and aligning with the highest ethical considerations and standards, animals can have a good quality of life even in a zoo setting. So how does zoo research contribute to animal welfare? You can see that then it enhances animal well-being. Research contributes to conservation efforts by helping zoos to create healthier, more genetically diverse populations that can thrive in controlled environments. It helps with public education, with evidence-based practices, with behavioral insights, with interdisciplinary collaboration. Research findings may also lead to advocacy for policy changes or the development of new international standards for animal welfare in zoos. It helps also with animal-human interactions. In terms of crisis response, research conducted in zoos, it plays a crucial role in crisis response, particularly in situations that involve conservation emergencies, disease outbreaks, natural disasters, and climate change. For us at the park, we recently went through Hochwasser, so flooding on the eve of Christmas 2023. Our area underwent high flood waters from heavy rains and the release of water from the Harz Mountains to relieve the dam. So this for us and in general was a result of climate change. What was important was that we received a huge amount of support from the local community, from friends, and from other zoos that were offering their help. Such situations can cause loss of revenue, and for some zoos, it could magnify existing issues related to animal welfare. So research in this situation ensures that animal welfare is not compromised during unpredictable events, as was noted, for example, during the pandemic. So to facilitate information flow during crisis and ensure continuity of care, it's important to have clear communication channels, support systems for the animal care teams, crisis response group, and contingency plans for animal welfare to be prepared through a national or local risk assessment, and a reassessment of how these enclosures are designed is very important. As such, research ensures that management can act quickly and effectively, whether through veterinary care or changes to the animal's environment. And lastly, we have long-term sustainability. This could involve acknowledging that ethical treatment of animals is not only better for animals, but it creates healthier ecosystems, which humans depend on for survival. So when species are seen to flourish in well-managed breeding and conservation programs, it can shift public perception, showing that managed environments can be a tool for the long-term survival of species from extinction and the well-being of species, rather than a source of harm. Next, please. Okay, so top-down positive results of research on animal welfare. These are significant because they influence various aspects of zoo and wildlife management, institutional policies and standards, as well as practices. These impacts would typically extend from the leadership and strategic decision-making at the highest level to the day-to-day operations of the zoo or institution. So regarding improving animal health, behavior, and management, the leadership at the institution may choose to invest in new technologies or equipment that allows animals to express more natural behaviors or improve animal health or monitoring. So you could have digital monitoring systems, you can advance, that allow for real-time tracking of an animal's health and behavior. Next, please. You may also have enhanced enrichment practices, and you can advance. And again. So there's a paper by Salas and colleagues from 2021, and they found that the attitudes of zoo visitors at Zoo Plankendale in Belgium were more influenced by the behaviors that were displayed by lemurs than by the naturalistic or artificial appearance of the enrichment items. So from these findings, they suggest that to improve animal welfare while also improving visitor experience, more emphasis should be placed on designing enrichment items that provide the animals with opportunities to display natural behaviors and to be more active, regardless of the appearance of the enrichment items. Next, please. Okay, so you can also have optimized habitat design. So zoos might invest in larger, more naturalistic enclosures, allowing the animals to express more natural behaviors, or they could have specialized training equipment that's based on research that shows that these changes benefit animal health and their behavior. Next, please. There are data-driven practices, so evidence-based research that can also help to implement changes in the zoo. Next, please. Enhanced funding opportunities is actually really important for the survival of the zoo. So when the benefits of improving animal welfare are demonstrated through research, it motivates organizations, governments, and corporations to allocate more resources towards advancing these goals. Additionally, public and private entities, they may see that the benefits of research for welfare-focused initiatives and sustainability is getting higher, is growing, is improving. And then this further amplifies funding opportunities. Next, please. Okay, so rationalization of costs allows zoos to direct more funds towards essential welfare programs and maintain sustainability. Furthermore, cost-effective research allows for more research to be done, leading to a better understanding of animal behavior and needs. Next, please. And lastly, enhanced communication and collaboration. So importantly, leadership at an institution would use research findings to create policies, to implement changes necessary to realize positive animal welfare, to improve staff training, allocate resources, shape public perception and support, and guide ethical concerns and decision-making, which ultimately would meet then the evolving needs of the animals in their care, the needs of the zoo staff and the communities that they serve, while leading to a more successful and a sustainable organization. So these are all top-down positive results of research on animal welfare. Next, please. Okay, and then on the stakeholders, we have also top-down positive results of animal welfare research. So for animals, you see improved welfare practices that lead to better living conditions, better health and well-being for zoo animals. Next, please. In terms of the zoo staff, research can enhance job satisfaction and increase their staff safety. For example, through better enclosure design, or in understanding how certain species react to stress or how they prefer to be approached, it can help prevent accidents. By using findings from animal welfare studies, zookeepers can adjust habitats. They can employ proper enrichment techniques. They can improve their daily routines to reduce stress-related problems. And then this leads to harmonious relationships between the animals and their caretakers, as such, enhanced animal care and a more manageable work environment. Okay, veterinary professionals, research provides evidence-based guidelines for more effective care and management. And next, please. Zoo visitors benefit from good animal welfare research because it enhances their overall experience, making it more engaging, more interactive, educational, and emotionally rewarding. So when visitors witness high standards of animal welfare, they're more likely to return. They are more likely to recommend the zoo to others and build a long-term relationship with the institution, which is crucial for the financial stability and long-term success of the zoo. More stakeholders involve conservation organizations such as the EAZA. So insights gained can support wildlife conservation efforts, particularly for endangered species, by applying best practices in animal management. Next, please. For regulatory bodies such as the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture in Germany, research can inform policy and regulations on animal care standards, leading to improved legal frameworks and animal protection. Next, please. For academia, research advances knowledge in animal behavior, welfare science, and zoo management, contributing to the field of ethology. And lastly, research also has an impact on the community and the society. So enhanced animal welfare practices reflect societal values of compassion and ethics, and it promotes greater awareness of animal rights and conservation issues. So when we, by understanding and leveraging these impacts, zoos can create a positive ripple effect that enhances animal welfare, and it benefits a wide range of stakeholders. Furthermore, By integrating research into their operations, zoos can create a more informed and effective approach to animal welfare. This would benefit, again, staff, it optimizes costs, and it improves animal management practices. Ultimately, this helps to enhance the zoo's reputation and supports its conservation mission. Okay, next, please. So I'm going to try to go through this briefly because I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. So the use of tools to assess animal welfare in zoos is crucial for ensuring physical and psychological well-being of animals. And this in turn supports conservation efforts and maintains public trust. Institutions now are showing more increased interest to ensure that animals are not just surviving, but thriving, while also providing more educational value to the visitors. For a welfare assessment tool, in order for it to be helpful, it's also important to note that changes in welfare status of the animal over time is to be assessed. It is also valuable to consider that the prior life experiences of the animal and how they came to live in the zoo is also important. So, for example, whether the animals were born in a zoo or in the wild, as this has been shown to alter animal-based parameters, which may be of value to the welfare assessment criteria. So you have behavioral observations, such as ethogram. You have environmental assessments, such as looking at the habitat suitability for the animal. There's also health monitoring. So you can look at hormonal sampling, veterinary records, BCS, so body condition scoring. You can look at welfare scoring systems, such as the 5 domains model, or animal welfare assessment grid. So this 2022 paper by Jones and colleagues, it reports that the establishment of standardized guidelines for developing zoo animal welfare assessment tools would be beneficial for data comparison and sharing. So we shift more towards standardizing these guidelines, and it helps then in assessing of the animals across species. Okay, next, please. And lastly, we have cognitive and psychological assessments, such as cognitive enrichment tools and stress indicators. There are a few more tools on the next page. We have zoo audits and welfare standards, such as the EAZA welfare guidelines. There is the feedback from the animal care staff, such as keepers' reports of perceived welfare, keeper reports of personality, and observations that they would report in their day-to-day reports that goes back to the zoo team. So for us, we have our Tagesbericht, and that comes in every day at the end of the day. And we're able to see what went down with the animals, how are they doing? Do some require more care? And we assess that case-by-case basis. We also have visitor interaction, so visitor impact assessments, the monitoring of reproductive success, and mortality and morbidity reports. So that needs to also be tracked and monitored. Okay, so the question is, if you can go to the next page, what if the well-being of animals was as important as our own? How would our world look if we realized that their welfare directly impacts our health, environment, and even the economy? In the context of a well-rounded discussion on the benefits of good animal welfare research to humans, I believe that both perspectives are blended, rather than being in opposition to each other or purely one or the other. So a balanced perspective takes on a nuanced, ethical, and systems-level approach. This involves acknowledging that there is intrinsic value of animal well-being, while also considering how improving the conditions of the animals has practical benefits for humans. So, for example, ethical research that respects animals' rights and needs can lead to advancements and innovation in health, in science, and sustainability, and it benefits humans in ways that go beyond health. As such, animal welfare is directly linked to human welfare because of shared responsibilities for health and disease control, for environmental sustainability. You can advance the slide, please. For food safety and quality, for mental and emotional well-being, economic impact, and ethical responsibility. So when animals are treated well, it often reflects the broader ethical standards, the health, and the environmental conditions that directly or indirectly benefit people. Ensuring the welfare of animals contributes to creating a healthier, more compassionate, and sustainable world for both animals and humans. And this emphasizes how interconnected we are on our planet. So it is a mutual benefit that animal welfare is our welfare. When animals thrive, so do we. Okay, next, please. All right, so the take-home message here is that in establishing an in-house research department at the Serengeti-Park Hodenhagen, we not only enhance the care and well-being of animals, but we also directly or indirectly create a positive ripple effect that benefits human welfare. As discussed, research focused on animal welfare motivates improvements in habitat design, enrichment practices, health assessments, and understanding of species-specific behavior and needs. And this in turn leads to healthier animals. Also, it impacts public engagement, education, and support of conservation efforts, while also improving the ethical and sustainable practices within the zoological garden. So the welfare of animals is linked with human well-being. As such, in my perspective, establishing a research department focused on animal welfare can also elevate the overall mission of the zoo. By advancing animal care, we advance our own health, we advance our safety and our ethical responsibility toward the environment, biodiversity, and society. So as such, emphasis on research is a key driver in creating harmonious relationship between humans and between animals, which would then allow us to build stronger, more sustainable future for both. So I think that ultimately caring for animals reflects our values as a society, and it contributes to a more compassionate world for all living beings. Next, please. Okay, so I would again like to thank the EAZA for this wonderful opportunity. I'm happy again that I was able to give this talk today. I would also like to thank my amazing colleagues at the Serengeti Park. They have been, since the start of this research department, aiding in the growth and development of the department. And of course, I want to thank my husband, 𝗜𝗱𝘂 and my two daughters, for their patience and support in the creation of this presentation, because sometimes I was not available and I needed to focus, and they really helped me. So I really appreciate the group, the stakeholder contribution to the creation of this presentation. But yes, you can advance the next slide. These are the references to my presentation if you are curious to gather more information. Next, please. So I end here by saying thank you all so much for your time and attention. And if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Adu. That was a fabulous talk. And thank you very much to your family, and especially your very young daughter, for sharing your time as well with us. We really appreciate it. So yes, we've got some questions coming in. If anybody does have any more, then please feel free to type them in the chat, and then we can invite you to say them out loud. So a couple that have just been sent in. What are your thoughts on the balance between acute and chronic stress? Because there's lots of talk, obviously, about the positive impact of some stress when we're thinking about animal welfare and animal experiences. But what are there any sort of rules on when it's good or when it's bad?
Okay, so coming from a neuroscience perspective, there are kind of rules when you start to see the changes in the hormones, in the way that the cells are reacting, and you also start to see it in the behavior of the animals, because we tended to do behavioral studies as well. But I think it's important to keep in mind the welfare indicators. You know, like when you know, okay, this species acts like this normally, naturally, but now they're not, you know, that's when, I think that's the first whisper that something's off. You can also have the keepers reports, like I mentioned, because these are the caregivers that are with the animals every day. So they would also note that there are changes in behavior. You could also keep in mind, okay, there's a construction happening in this enclosure or the one nearby, and it's impacting the animals. Or it's been raining for 6 weeks straight, and now the animals are, huddled together. Or so just assessing their welfare in terms of looking at their behavior. Is it typical from what they are known to express? Those are things to keep in mind. So I can't give a concrete, there are hard and fast rules to say, okay, this is an acute stressor, this is a chronic stressor, but I can say you should note if there are changes in their behavior and if there are changes in their environment. And that gives us a somewhat indication that, they may be going through a chronic stress.
Great, yeah. Thank you. I've got another one here on, so for people wanting to develop research in zoos, have you got any sort of tips, kind of, where to start? Because I think it's, it can be quite a daunting proposition if you've not really done research before. Have you got any advice?
Yes, I can only speak from experience. So I've had the wonderful opportunity to build it from the ground up. So it was pretty much just learning as I go. And again, zoology was not my field. I am a neuroscientist, but I am swerving, like Michelle Obama says, and I am learning something new, which is where it comes in handy that my colleagues are also really helpful, and it's a collegial environment. So it also means that if you're not sure what you're doing, to ask around, go to other locations, visit other zoos, ask people for mentorship, or just meet with them and discuss what are you doing, even just in terms of research, what are you doing? And look at the guidelines. There's a research committee that also has these I read a lot of that, and I learned what to do, how to prepare our guiding policies. And it really just then starts to become this experience that grows. It also helps to have a budget set by the Serengeti Park for the research department. So I have a yearly starting budget of 15,000 euros, and I'm able to work with that to kind of have a certain level of freedom to plan for research projects, maybe plan for equipment that we need, ask the veterinary team for samples collected opportunistically. But yes, you really just need a team of people, and you need to be able to seek mentorship or ask questions from others that have done it, to reach the people that what's the word now? They have experienced it, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already been invented. You just have to advance it. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I had just one quick question. I think we've just got time. What are your thoughts on actively involving the public in zoo research? So to sort of taking a citizen science approach and getting people engaged in research within the zoo. Do you think that's going to have benefits for the public, or have you got any thoughts on if that's, something that would be useful?
I see the utility in citizen science. The only thing that might make me a little hesitant is the reproducibility of that assessment done by the public. But I guess it depends on how the project was set up. Maybe something that helps in terms of this is if you're looking for a certain species of bird and you put it out there that, hey, the public, if you observe this species, please note where it was, mark it on a map. And so those in that sense would help. But in terms of involving the public in research, I think it's more in educating them on what you're doing in your zoo. I think that's the best way to involve them, because then it changes the perceptions and the attitudes that they have towards zoos. And you're able to back up any criticism that comes your way by saying, we did this work, now this is what we found out, and it's not detrimental to the animal if that was the result. So just educating the visitors and bringing them to change the perception of how they see zoos would be one way I would say that can involve them in zoo research. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm conscious of time. I don't want to keep you too long, so we'll wrap up here. But just thank you so much for coming along today. This has been the end of our 2024, and it's been a really fantastic talk to finish on. So we're supremely grateful. Thank you to everybody that's come along today as well. If you want to see any of the other webinars that have happened this year, or you want to look back at this one, you can find them on the EAZA YouTube channel. So if you just head there.